Welcome to the Hair Industry Mixer. Get ready to dive into a world where hair meets makeup, beauty, fashion, business, and entertainment. Join me as I mix it up with special guests and friends sharing captivating stories and insider knowledge about the hair industry. From business strategies on set to the secrets behind the chair, I'm here to provide you with the scoop and keep you up to date with the latest. So buckle up and prepare to be immersed in a blend of informative, entertaining discussions. Let's uncover the secrets of the hair industry together. So grab your headphones, turn up the volume, and get ready to indulge in the ultimate hair experience. This is your chance to stay in the loop, be in the know, and take your hair game to a whole new level. Let's mix and mingle and have a good old time at the Hair Industry Mixer podcast show. Today we're going to be discussing our updates and negotiations. Miss Polly Lucke here is very close to this, and we want to see or get your voice on what's going on, if you can share. So what are the latest updates in the union negotiations? Like, what stage are we at currently?
Well, currently the IA and the AMPTP, which is the producers that we negotiate with, the employers, they have concluded all of the individual local negotiations. So those are the sort of subcontracts that are particular to each and every local. You know, what's important to 706 members is not what's important to local 80 members or to local 729 members.
Okay.
So all of those individual agreements have been negotiated. We have had some really big gains. I think every local has really achieved some things that they were very interested in getting, but they are all tentative agreements. And what that means is none of those conditions go into effect until we actually accept and ratify the basic agreement, which is the bigger contract that covers all of the locals, no matter what you do. And it covers things like wage increases and overtime and turnaround. And those are the things that are kind of the same for everybody.
Right.
So they took a short break. They had sort of reached a point with the basic agreement where they stepped away to negotiate what's called the area standards contract. And there's essentially kind of three zones for the contracts for the IA. There is the New York majors and the Northeast corridor, which covers work on the East Coast, and kind of exactly what it sounds like: Philly, New York, Boston, that little corner, that upper right-hand corner of the United States. There is the basic agreement, which covers work here in Los Angeles County in California. And then area standards covers everybody who falls in between those areas. So if you're shooting in Texas or Oklahoma or Georgia or Ohio, area standards is the contract that covers people working in those areas. And they're somewhat intertwined in that many of the things are the same in all three contracts. So they're working out all of the stuff for area standards now, and then they're going to go back and finish the basic agreement. And they're still sort of stuck on those really big things, which is wage increases and how to shore up our pension and health plan.
Wow. That's one thing about you, Polly. You are well informed and very thorough. Like, she's going to give you the A through Z on these topics. Thank you. Thank you. So what are the key points you would say are being discussed as far as these negotiations and regarding our specific union local needs?
Well, our specific local needs, I think, you know, historically, the big issue that we have been trying to negotiate for really the last over 2 decades is parity for hairdressers. A lot of people don't realize it wasn't until, I believe, the 2006 contract that hairdressers actually became their own department. Up until then, the makeup department head was the head of the whole trailer. It was makeup department head, and then there was a, quote, key hairstylist who ran the hairdressers, but the boss of the key hairstylist was the makeup department head. And when they created the title of hair department head, that was when we separated out and became our own department. Unfortunately, historically, men were makeup artists, women were hairdressers, and what started out as a small disparity in pay because as it happens in almost every industry that is female dominated, you pay the women less than you pay the men. That gap has risen to almost 20% between the contract rates. So we have been trying to negotiate that for a long time and get some movement on that. The producers, unfortunately, have taken the attitude for a long time that we should have fixed that in the 1970s when we removed the gender requirements on the job. So there was a lot of talking about that. I think we've made some good movement on it, but that was one of our big priorities. And other than that, many of the things that we're talking about are things that other departments are talking about: turnaround, safety in the workplace, kit fees. That's something that's really been squeezed in the last few years, is our kit fees and what we're paid for the use of our equipment. And I think we presented a really great presentation to the producers about what our kits involve, because the people that we talk to in the room are lawyers and accountants. They are not necessarily really producers who work on set. So, right. When you're able to demonstrate to someone, this is what a typical kit looks like, and this is how much money is involved in a typical kit, I think it really made a big impact on them. I was really impressed that it was predominantly female producers in the room with us negotiating. And I think, not to deliver gender stereotypes, but women purchase beauty products. They understand how much hairstyling products cost, how much makeup products cost. And I think they comprehend that in a different way than the previous negotiation. It seemed like a bunch of old white guys in the room, and they didn't really get it. So I feel like we really made some headway with that, and we're really able to kind of make some really good points on what our work involves and what we bring to work with us every day when we show up.
That's hopeful, like seriously, because I'm like, I often was wondering, like when I came in, I was like, well, what does the $25 really cover? Because perhaps while you're on the job, your stuff gets stolen or it gets damaged because of anything could happen, right? But like if you lose your stuff, your tools, your working tools while at work on set, what is that kit fee going to really do for us?
Yeah, and it technically your kit rental is covering your tools. So for makeup artists, that's brushes. And for hairstylists, it's your curling irons and your blow dryers and those things that you use. But the things that we use in addition to that are things that are what we call expendables, where they leave our hands and they do not come back. A makeup foundation doesn't come back to you at the end of the day. Hairspray doesn't come back to you at the end of the day. And that was one of the things we talked about, was sort of separating out the difference between renting our tools that we come with and the fact that we bring a whole host of products that no production is ever going to want to shell out the money and pay for, but we need to be prepared for all hair textures, all skin types, all skin colors. And so our kits are necessarily very large because of that. And we are willing to give you those things as long as you reimburse us for them. So that was something that really got discussed.
Oh, that's great. That's exciting to hear, because it's just like, I feel like we're being used, not feel like we are. The reality of it is we are being used for these things. And it's just like, we're not making enough back to replace those things.
Correct. With rising costs, and while I was still the assistant business rep, I had members who called me. They were working on a tier 1 movie, which is a very low budget movie, and their producer only wanted to pay them $5 a day for their kit fee, and they wanted a very high-end fashion look for the makeup on the show. And in talking to a male UPM, I finally just said to him, I think you should go down to your hair and makeup trailer and look at what they have actually brought with them and see the scope of their kits and see exactly how much stuff they have, false eyelashes, false eyelash glue, hairspray, styling products, rollers, all of that. It's a huge, the only venue that we work in that provides anything is most of the soap operas have a fully stocked hair and makeup room. I did a little bit of soap opera work in my career, And they said, just bring your,
Tools.
don't bring anything with you because we aren't paying you a kit fee. And if they don't pay you a kit fee, you don't have to show up with anything other than your pocketbook and your ID. You know, they are supposedly providing everything for you. And when I walked into that hair and makeup room, they had everything. They had hot rollers, they had curling irons, they had what looked like a full makeup counter set out. You know, they had.
Sound went out. Your sound went out.
Oh, did I lose my connection?
I hear you now. So you said,
I think my things have died.
oh, okay, that's probably what it is. So I lost you.
Sorry for my
No, it's
technical issue here. I think we're gonna have to just go to my microphone.
No problem.
It's in microphone. All right, can you hear?
Say it again.
Switch back in.
Sounds good. Yep, lost you. Let's keep talking. Let's hear.
Microphone, here we go. Can
Okay.
you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Sorry about that.
No, it's okay.
Long session.
I know.
All right, so when did I drop out?
You dropped out at when you show up to the room, they had all the tools, so you didn't need anything. You want to start back at you didn't need to show up with anything but your pocketbook?
When you work on a soap opera, at least the ones that I worked on, they provided everything. All you needed to show up with was your ID and your pocketbook, because when you walked in, they had a full, it looked like a beauty salon. They had a full makeup counter set up. They had every curling iron you can imagine. They had hot rollers, but most places that we work do not provide that. They provide an empty space with a chair and a mirror, and we have to bring everything else that goes along with what we do for our job.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the difference too, because with soaps versus TV, the film and episodics being on the rosters, it's a different experience. You do have to bring your tools, if nothing else. And over there, just show up to work. But I did experience on some shows, I still would have to bring my tools, but it is a difference. And it's why it's like, another question is like, where do they come up with the number of 25 or 35 or 50 and sometimes 75?
Well, the numbers used to be a lot bigger, and that's something that I've seen over the course of my career, that as budgets have gotten tighter and things have started to get squeezed harder, and I think we are an easy target because many of the people that we negotiate are men who do not understand hair and makeup and what things cost and what we actually bring. It has gotten harder to, a decade ago, it was perfectly normal for many department heads to make $100 to $150 a day for a kit rental. Now you're lucky if you can squeeze $50 out of a production for your kit rental. And it used to be a negotiating point of perhaps they couldn't give you as much of a rate bump as you would like if you were negotiating an overscale rate, but they would negotiate a higher kit fee to make that up to you. And that has kind of gone away, I think, particularly in the last decade, and they have been squeezing budgets just as hard as they can and eliminating all of that. Nobody questions a camera package that is a $5,000 rental, but if you are renting your hair and makeup equipment, a lot of times they don't really realize the scope and the cost of what it is that we bring with us. And that's why it's really important that your inventory really reflect an accurate dollar amount of what you are bringing with you into the workplace.
I'm so glad you mentioned that, because that was going to be one of my next questions. Like, so what does it look like for a cameraman, or, when they bring in their equipment to work? Like, is there kit rental fee like as little as ours? Or is it enough to where if they damage a lens or something happens to their camera or equipment on set that they're able to replace it?
Well, that tends to be something that gets argued about. A lot of times if you actually have a high dollar camera package, you carry insurance on that package yourself. And that's part of your expense of doing business. And I know makeup people who have a rider on their homeowners or their renters insurance to cover their own equipment. I know people who've had their kits stolen out of their cars. I know people whose trailers have caught on fire. If you can, you should try to negotiate with production to cover your, what they call loss and damage, L&D, if something happens on set to your equipment, that it is damaged and it's not your fault, that they will cover that. But many studios now are really cracking down on that because they don't want the financial responsibility of loss and damage on the equipment. But at the end of the day, if you have a camera that's on a crane and the crane breaks or something happens and the camera falls off and smashes on the ground,
Right.
you know, they have to cover that. That is why productions have insurance. So it just gets a little harder with what we do with hair and makeup, especially because our things aren't on set. They aren't usually involved in the actual shooting day. They are just on the grounds of the production or in the trailer.
Right. Helping to get the talent ready.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if your equipment is in the trailer and the trailer flips over while it's being transported, if the trailer is supposedly locked up over the weekend and you come back and your equipment has been stolen, you know, these are things that the studio has a responsibility to provide some security for you and your belongings. And you can't be expected to load out of the trailer every Friday night and then load back in every Monday. So, you know, it sort of depends on the situation, but in general, that's why you provide an inventory, and that's why you should have dollar amounts attached to what's on your inventory.
Okay. So, it's a lot with that. It is a lot with that. And then there's another thought you brought up about men having those positions back in the day, like as hair and makeup in the trailer, and the differences of now finally having a separation of a department head and of hair and one of makeup. So they no longer share the title, or makeup no longer has control over that. But you said since 2006, it seemed like it took a minute for that to really go into play, because I had still been working on shows, and it seemed like in the departments it was still kind of operating that way. But definitely in the soap opera world, I saw that was a thing. But was that based on roster shows only?
I would say soap operas are a little bit of a different beast, and it is typical that a soap opera will have one person who is designated as the head of both departments.
Mm-hmm.
But it does still happen in the episodic and film world. I had a friend who's a fellow hairstylist who called me last week because she was having this issue on her show.
Oh, wow.
She is working with an older makeup member who is trying to be the boss of her, and she is not getting the information that she needs. It's going to the makeup department head, but it's not filtering to her. And there were things like that involved costumes, and costumes was talking to the makeup department head instead of coming and talking to her about an issue that was really about the hair department. And, you know, I just told her, I said, I think this may be something that you need to work out with your UPM and HR, but ultimately you are the head of your department, and hierarchy on set is a little bit gray. In sometimes we answer to the costume designer. Sometimes we answer to the production designer. We are not completely independent in the hierarchy of the creative side of the film. But I have frequently had costume designers criticize my work and tell me to change something. And ultimately, the way that production is structured, I am happy to take their direction and go back and do something different, because they are the people who are really kind of responsible for the overall look of the physicality of the actors.
Right.
So they aren't technically my boss, but I am happy to accept their input.
Right. I mean, because collectively it's team effort, and it's a vision, and it's them fulfilling the needs of what the director and the producers want.
Correct.
So,
Correct.
you know, but that's where all that comes out in the production meetings. It seems like that would have been a discussion versus you finding out, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
later on down the road, you're like, wait, where is this? Because that'll throw you off. Someone comes at you like that, especially from that department, because you're like, you're not my boss. So where's this coming from? Because this is not what was discussed in the production meeting.
Yeah, and this is such a collaborative effort with
Mhm.
every department, but in particular with hair and makeup. And I think it is really important that you have a good working relationship with your makeup department head. But at
Mhm.
the same time, we are our own department and we do have autonomy. We do have the title, and we should have the respect that goes along with that title,
Yeah.
and figure out how to work collaboratively and not step on people's toes.
Yes. Well, we can probably go on for hours with these individual points, because it's a lot of things that you've mentioned, that talking points as far as the union, our specific union agreement or negotiations, right? So what about our basic agreements? What are the major changes or updates that we might be looking forward to seeing?
Well, I think the thing that is really revolutionary about this negotiation is, for the first time, the IA has really sought input from the members about exactly what they want.
Hmm.
And for good or ill, that has not always been the case.
Hmm.
And sometimes the challenge with that is sometimes the members themselves are not that educated on the contract. I sat on a couple of different subcommittees for the big basic agreement for the entire IA.
Mm-hmm.
And every single business rep who was on that committee said, yeah, when we did our survey, we had space for people to write in, is there anything we haven't covered that you would like to see in the contract? And they said they had at least a couple of responses of people bringing forward really great ideas of things that were already covered in the contract. They just didn't know it.
Oh, wow.
So
Is that a sign saying like, okay, these things are in place, but maybe we're not seeing it actually being applied?
I think we're not seeing it being applied. And a lot of times it's not applied because people are ignorant of it. And, we have responsibility as workers to know what our own rights are. And
Mhm.
if you don't know what your contract is, somebody will tell you, oh no, you don't get a meal penalty for that. And if you're just like, oh, okay, and you go along with it,
Yeah.
that's on you.
That's true. Yeah.
You do have an obligation to educate yourself and know what your rights are. When I was still the assistant business rep, one of the things that I put together was just a document that was called Know Your Roster Contracts. And it was about just the basic things. This is the basic agreement. It's an 8-hour minimum call. Time and a half starts at this time. Double time starts at that time. This is what your turnaround is. This is what your meal penalties are. Like, those are kind of the big questions that everybody wants to know.
Right.
And they might be a little bit different between the basic agreement and the long form MOW and the videotape. And you kind of need to know which contract you're working under so that you can figure that out. Now, that said, one of the things the IA has really been focusing on in the last decade.
Hold on. Repeat that, because you were going in and out on that part.
Okay. Some of the conditions are a little bit different depending on which contract you're actually working under, whether it's the MOW, the long form, the videotape, or the actual basic agreement. So you need to know what contract you're working under.
Mhm.
But one of the things the IA has really been trying to do in the last few years is bring all of the contracts into alignment. So it doesn't matter so much which contract you're working under. They want it to kind of be a same across the board, that your rate might be different, but your working conditions should be the same, whether you're working on a big budget movie or whether you're working on a lower budget streaming project, to kind of level the playing field and make it fair for everybody and make everybody have the same conditions.
Okay. That was a mouthful. That was a lot.
Yeah.
That's a lot. Yeah, you guys. So how long if you can even answer that, like when you're sitting in on these negotiations, how long does that really take? Is it like hours?
Well, the negotiations committee for 706 met every couple of weeks starting in October. up through the beginning of the year. And then the various subcommittees that we were meeting on met every week to discuss what we were bringing in from our members.
Mhm.
So the IA was sort of relying on us to funnel a huge amount of information into a narrower path so that they could put it all together into a comprehensive negotiating strategy.
Okay.
And since March, it has just been the IA and the various business reps sitting at the negotiating table. So it's they have been hammering out these details, and it's largely President Loeb and Vice President Mike Miller. Those are really the two lead negotiators for the IA, meeting across the table from Carol Lombardini, who is the lead negotiator for the employers for the AMPTP.
Okay.
And the biggest difference this time from the last time, they really seem to be honestly engaging with us. There's much less pushback from the employers. I think at this point, after the strikes and the work stoppages, everybody wants us to get back to work. The employers want to start making money again, and the IA wants their people to be going back to work and making money again. So it kind of feels like we're on the same page, and it's not quite so adversarial as it was the last time.
Butting heads.
Yeah, it's more, let's find a way forward and let's do something that is equitable.
Amen to that. Like that sounds very like hopeful. Like it sounds like that's like we have some light at the end of the tunnel there.
I really believe so. I really think that it is a different negotiation than what has happened in the last few cycles.
So with the changes that impact as union, or how will these changes impact us as union members? These things that you guys been talking about, if you can share.
I think that they will make a happier workplace, a more safe workplace, and a place that is focused on getting from point A to point B in a way that isn't crushing people, because it's become very expensive to produce film and television, and their two biggest expenses are equipment rentals and stage rentals. So they have compressed the schedules in order to reduce the amount of money that they're spending on those two things. If they can shoot it in 10 weeks instead of 12 weeks, and they can save that 2 weeks of rental on stages and equipment, it's cheaper for them to pay more money to the crew than to rent the stages and equipment. And they aren't taking into account the human cost that is involved with squeezing that down by another few weeks.
Yeah, because that goes into a lot of other things. So before I even go into that, because I do want to touch on some of the topics that you guys are discussing, but it sounds like we're going to have some potential benefits in that. But can we hear if there were going to be, do you think that we'll have some challenges that we'll face too moving forward?
Well,
Like in all honesty with the negotiations, because it's like we're negotiating. It's a negotiation that's happening. That doesn't mean that all the things are going to be, all the needs will be met, but you know, we have hopes that some of them will, because we do have a lot of good talking points, and with so many things that have happened over the past year to the past month or couple of weeks, I felt like that could be ammunition for certain things to move forward in our benefits.
I think so. I think the death of a crew member a few weeks ago after working back-to-back 14-hour days made it really clear that safety is a huge issue right now, and that people getting adequate rest and turnaround is still a primary importance. You know, we made strides in the last contract with weekend turnaround, but there are still shows that are working long and abusive hours. And there is a financial cost to that, as well as a personal cost, and they need to address that. Now, a negotiation is by definition give and take. it's not a hostage situation where you go in and you say, this is what I want, or you get nothing. You know, there has to be some back and forth. And I think that the way they have done the negotiations in doing all of the individual tentative agreements, but tying them to ratification of the basic agreement, I've been sort of comparing it to carrot and the stick. So we've seen the carrots, they have showed them to us, they are really beautiful. But the stick is going to be what we get overall in the basic agreement, you know, what we are accepting in wage increases, what we get in turnaround, how they shore up the motion picture health plan. You know, those are the things that we might have to give a little bit in order to get the things that we want on our individual agreements. And you know, the joke is a good contract negotiation is where both parties walk away and neither one is happy. Because
why is that?
you know, and it's kind of true. Nobody gets everything they want in a negotiation, because you have to be willing to give up something to get other things that you really want. So they are trying to strike that balance now of what are we willing to give to get what we want. And we can't just go in and say we want everything. You know, the people who say, you know, we should just strike and they would fold in 2 weeks. You know, that's what the writers said last year. And that strike went on forever and was untenable. So we have to be a good partner with our employers. We work with them, and we need to not be thinking of them as adversaries, but as partners in the workplace. And how does everybody get most of the things that they want, but you can't get everything.
Right. And then hopefully they look at it the same way as how we're trying to be reasonable, that they're also trying to be reasonable, not just us just always kind of being sucked dry out of the relationship.
Yeah. You can't just make blanket statements like we should get a 20% pay increase. And it's, you know, it's like, well, I'd like to be 6 feet tall and a supermodel also, but that's not going to happen. So, you know, you have to be realistic in what you can expect to get over the course of a contract. And I think that's the other thing to think about is it's 3 years and you might not get everything in the first year, but hopefully by the third year, you have gotten most of what you wanted. That if you can sort of do it in baby steps and do it progressively, you may end up with a better deal than what you would get if you just went in and tried to demand a lot of things all at once.
Okay, now you're speaking on the on our side of things. I was thinking of it too as like us not being sucked dry out of our work because of what we're asking for to protect us versus the opposite always happening. Like, okay, we'll accept it because we need to work versus, okay, can we get a little bit more here or can we get some support here so that we can? So that's why I was coming at that angle. I don't know if that's what, if you got me on that part.
I think the last contract is a great show of that. You know, we never had a weekend turnaround until the last contract. And I think that has reined in some of the excessive hours that people have been working, because if you need to have a 54-hour turnaround, that means you have to wrap by midnight on Friday in order to have a 6 or a 7, 8, I don't remember which it is, crew call on Monday. You know, you to just do the math of 54 hours, you have to stop on Friday at a reasonable time, which means that you need to keep an eye on your schedule over the course of the week. So it's not, you know, I've been on shows where Monday is a 7 a.m. crew call and Tuesday is a noon crew call because we got so far behind on Monday. And, you know, it's like you have to keep that in mind every single day and keep the wheels rolling. If you waste 5 minutes per hour in a 12-hour day, you've added an hour to your day. So you need to be mindful of the time, and nobody likes an AD who's constantly saying, hurry up, hurry up, hurry up. But that is what they're trying to do, is shave that 5 minutes off of every hour and keep the day moving so that we aren't wrapping at midnight on Monday.
Right. Now, when we talk about the time and the responsibility of that, like we all play a part in it, but ultimately, when you're saying paying attention to the time, that's the responsibility of productions, the higher ups, correct? Because
Correct. It's
Days.
realistic schedules. It's
Right.
realistic scripts. It's, you can, there's an old joke that old timers tell about famous eighth of a page scenes, reveal Oz, Atlanta burns, the chariot race begins. It's like, that doesn't take up very much room in the script, but it's going to take you an awful lot of time to shoot it. So you have to make your schedule appropriate to get all of that work done. And that was one of the big things in the return to work agreements for COVID that people said over and over to these producers is the problem starts when you're making your schedule and when you're writing your scripts, that you need to create a realistic schedule for the scope of what is written on the page in order to get it done. Because you can't have everything. There's an old joke, there's a golden triangle of you can have good, cheap, and fast, but you only get to choose two of them. So you have to pick what you're going to do over the course of your day. Sometimes it is not that the hair and makeup is perfect, that it is good enough and we've got the shot and we should move forward.
Honestly, it's like having a business plan, really.
Yeah.
So, if you start a job or if you start a business and if you don't have the plan, you're not going to execute what you thought you were within the time frame. So it's like, if you don't have all that, like you said, scheduled out, then you're going to miss the mark every time. And then you're going to find the days rolling over. And I've been on a couple of shows where it's been like that. And I guess it was due to a particular episode, whoever the producer and director were for that episode, it was just a constant, like, long days where the next day was late call times. It would get later and later each week. It was something different, but it was always a long day with them. And it's just like, somebody didn't do some planning well, clearly. And it's unfortunate because it's just like, it does affect the whole crew.
And sometimes things just happen. I think that's the sign of a good director, that sometimes you need to reassess at lunch where the day, things that have happened and where the day has gone.
Mhm.
And you need to, if what you really want is the big crane shot, then you need to accommodate your schedule to make that happen, and roll with the punches and be adaptive. And that is so important in this industry, is that not everything goes like clockwork, and you have to be prepared to sort of turn on a dime and make some changes and just keep the day moving forward.
Yeah, be able to pivot wherever you might need to.
Yeah. If you have one day on a location and 5 scenes to shoot, you need to make sure you get those scenes done, because you're never coming back to that location again.
Right. Well, hopefully not.
Yeah. Or you're going to have to add another
go
day at that
reshoot.
location, and that's going to impact your budget.
Right. Or the reshoots happen at the end of, wow. Yeah. So there were some things I know I was looking over, I highlighted, I wanted to ask about or inquire. So, and the talking points for the basic and area standard negotiation. So on improving overtimes and reasonable rest, right? It was a part, it says, well, let's see. I'll just read it. So to ensure the sacrifices that we make for the work hours or the long work hours are recognized and compensated, while penalizing and desensitizing bad acting employers for patterns of unsafe overwork. This balanced approach and informed by the majority of members indicating they wanted stronger overtime rather than hard caps or hours. So in our recent losses, that was mentioned earlier, like, what was that on 911? So many people have been talking about it. It's been such a sad story to hear. And then we've had an accident that happened in Atlanta with the car that rolled over and someone cracked the skull, broken spine, like horrible, horrific outcome with those 2 stories. You think that will be good talking points or leverage on getting that to move in our benefit for the time and over, like, what is it? Working us over the hours?
I think so. I hope that that they are making the point, nobody does their best work in the 14th hour of the day.
Right.
You know, people are tired. There are limits to human capacity for concentration and producing superior work. And I think some producers get it and have started making changes that way. But it's really difficult when you are in a business where literally time is money
Right.
to find the way to balance human need against the desire for a superior product. And it starts at the top. It starts with your producers. It starts with them setting the schedule that is realistic and achievable for the scope of what they want. And I hope that we are able to make some strides on that in this negotiation, because we really need to. I have worked on shows that had a cap on the day where it was a hard out. It was a 12-hour day. You
Mhm.
knew crew call was 7 a.m. every morning, and you would be walking to your car at 7:45 on Friday night, because they would just pull the plug. They would not accommodate directors who wanted to go over or who wanted to do more. And that was their priority, was achieving the day in 12 hours. Most producers are not like that. They are more focused on getting the quality of the show that they want. And I don't know how you balance those two things, but it is something that they need to keep their eye on. And it seems like the only way to make them really do it is to make it financially uncomfortable for them to go into long hours or to not have proper turnaround. And I think those are some of the things that are being discussed, is how do we sort of make it unpleasant for them to engage in that sort of activity. You can do it if you want, but
Mhm.
it's going to cost you. And I think they're trying to work out how to achieve that.
Right. Oof. And it's unfortunate to even have to bring up these past incidences or accidents, excuse me, in order to get people to see or move them so they won't happen again. And to protect the people, because it's just like, come on, guys, like, where's the empathy here? Where's the morale? Like, where was that lost in the time of work? I get time is money, yes, but at the end of the day, they're human too. They still also have family members. Imagine if they're working all these long, late hours and they have to drive home, and then that one day, you know what I mean? Because it can happen to them as well. But it's just like, it's unfortunate that we have to have those experiences and losses of life and bring that to the table in hopes that it will make them think, let's really think about what's at cost and what's at risk here.
Yeah. And I think some of the high profile things that have happened in the last couple of years, I think the incident on Rust with the inexperienced armorer, I think they are more focused on that it should be, you should have people who have adequate safety training being in charge of things that are dangerous, like guns and stunts and driving shots. You know, it's those are the things that you know are potentially dangerous, and you should be keeping an extra strong watch on it. And I think all of these things have caused negative publicity, which is not what these corporations want. And so they are interested in finding a solution to help their own profile. And if that's what it takes, then that's a great way to get there. But you know, sometimes people don't realize there's a problem until they see the big red flag of something terrible happening. And I hope we're moving to a better, more kind business model for this industry, and especially as newer people come into the industry. You know, younger people are not necessarily so interested in this job when they find out how hard it is.
I've been hearing that too. Because
You know,
it is a lot. It's more than just doing hair. It really is.
yeah.
it's a lot more involved. It's very labor intensive. It's the long hours. It's the driving. It's learning how to communicate. It's, you know, the proper work ethics and learning the protocols and the laws and all the things.
Yeah,
And how to
and
understand
everyone,
the script and respecting people, you know, and knowing
yeah,
the hierarchy in the business as well.
yeah, hiring people who are knowledgeable about how to get you from point A to point B is really important. And if you are, there are some jobs that shouldn't be entry level position. You should hire someone with some knowledge and experience in order to ensure that they hopefully know what they're doing. And I hope we're becoming a better industry because of all of these tragic accidents that have happened, and moving forward in a way that's better for everybody. That's mostly what I'd like to see.
Same here. I mean, that's a prayer. I pray about some of these things for sure, because it's just like, after all the years of seeing the same things repeatedly happening, it's just like, when is it gonna give? You know?
Yeah, I was on a show probably 10 years ago where I heard one of the camera people one day talking about what a great show this was, because we were really pretty much sticking to 12-hour days and it was working out really well. And I just went up to him quietly and said, I hope you appreciate that your 12-hour day is not the same for every department. And for your hair and makeup people who only have at that time, it was a 9-hour turnaround in studio, that I am the person who is letting you have the 12-hour day because I am getting 9 hours of turnaround every day. We are turning the crew on my call time because I need to be here to do number 2 on the call sheet. And so what time I finish at the end of the night is becoming an important thing. And he was like, oh, I had never thought of it that way. And it's like, yeah, a lot of people have the idea about 12 on, 12 off, and that works great for a lot of departments, but it doesn't work well for hair, makeup, and wardrobe, because we are usually there before anyone else on the crew, and we sometimes are there after the crew is wrapped because we have to clean people up or take their wigs off, or wardrobe has to get their clothes, you know, bagged, tagged, and sent off to be cleaned. And
Breakdown. At the end of the day. And
yeah,
also, don't want to forget the transpo guys, because they're pretty much on the clock 24/7, if you ask me.
yeah, no,
Like,
it is inhuman the way some of the transpo people work.
seriously.
And you know, it's unnecessary, and people's desire for overtime and to make a bigger paycheck has driven things for a long time.
Yeah.
And I've really tried to advocate of, you know, that overtime you get, first of all, it's blood money. You are going to regret it at some point in your life. And secondly, it doesn't really make that big a difference. A lot of times that extra time that you work pushes you into a higher tax bracket, and all it means is you're paying more money in taxes. You're not really taking home that much more for working than if you had worked a shorter, more reasonable day.
You said it, because it's just like, why would I want to pay Uncle Sam all this time and I'm not getting it? I'm not benefiting from it. So I'll take the hours that's necessary. I mean, if we need to run over a little bit because of whatever, fine, but not on a regular. I don't care too much about it.
Yeah.
I
And
mean, every now and then, you know, to catch up, it might, if you need be, okay, that it makes it, I say do it when it makes sense.
yeah.
You know
And
what I mean?
it's one thing to work a couple of long days a week, but it's really hard to sustain working 5 days a week on a show, or in some cases 6 days. And all of those days are long. Like there
Right.
has to be some, you know, it's like a steam engine. You have to release the pressure or it's just going to explode eventually.
Yeah.
And I think we need to find better ways to take care of ourselves and take care of each other, whether it's letting somebody on your crew go home early once a week so that they have proper rest, so they see their families, so they see their loved ones, so they can just take a deep breath and not feel like they are completely exhausted every single minute of every single day.
Yeah. Now that we discussed that, I wanted to tap in on some other hot topics in our in our local, about the AI one, and then our benefits and health insurance and the hours and banking that and how that is going to look for us moving forward. So I see that they have in discussions safety rails or safeguards for us now, and regarding how they're going to use AI and how it might take over, or if it takes over our positions in doing hair and makeup, and now and in the future, like how it will, what is going to be in place, I guess I should ask, to protect us with that, like, because that is a hot topic, and it's in with technology, it just keeps growing and getting better, and we keep implementing it in work, especially if it makes it easier on production end, right? They don't want they don't want to spend the money really, but if it makes things easier, they'll definitely replace us if they can. If they can. I feel like we're not so replaceable in that. We're still needed, but I'm sure they'll find a way.
I think it's a two-sided issue of, number one, there has always been developing technologies that put people out of work. And my big joke is, just like all the people who made buggies and buggy whips in the 1800s were not very excited about the development of the automobile. There are still people who build buggies and who make buggy whips. There aren't as many of them as there were 200 years ago, but there is still a need for what they do. And in some ways, you can't really hold back the tide of developing technology. It is going to move forward.
Right.
But I do think the IA is making a conscientious effort to work with both the employers and with the federal government about how this technology gets implemented and how you do squeeze people out of their jobs and their livelihoods. And the real challenge, I think, is that it's just going so fast. What AI could do a year ago is much different than what it can do now and what it'll be able to do 5 years from now. And it's really hard to negotiate a contract for what's going to happen in the future because we just don't know what the developments are going to be.
That's right.
I do think it's going to impact our industry, but I don't know what that's going to look like because it's just too hard to predict. But right. I am trying to trust that the experts that the IA has hired are going to reach something that's equitable for us. We do currently have a provision in our contract that if your job is eliminated because of developing technology, the employers are obligated to provide you with training to potentially move you into a new position. That's already in our contract and has been there for a while. How that plays out in the future, I don't know, but I think there's still going to continue to be a need for hair and makeup people, but are they going to need as many of us?
Right.
Are they going to need us forever? I don't know what the industry is going to look like in 10 years. And it's funny, I've been reading a book. I think it's called The Oral History of Hollywood. And it's based on interviews that people at AFI, the American Film Institute, have done. And they started in the 1980s interviewing all of these people who really worked in the beginning of the film industry, in the silent era, moving into sound, and talking about how the technology changes changed what they did. And it's been very interesting reading that portion of the book, because I think it's really been 100 or so years since something like this has happened. And I think what's happening with AI is just as revolutionary as sound coming into the movies. And we don't really know what the final picture is going to look like. They came up with some really clunky things at the beginning of the sound era that didn't stick around and didn't last. So
yeah, I understand with this, because as I play around with AI, I don't know if you have the chance or opportunity to play around with yourself, there's so many glitches in it. And it's really, not to say it's going to stay in that space. Of course not. It's going to continue to grow, learn, and do better, because that's how the AIs are. But I've definitely seen the glitches, and it makes you have to be very specific in how you prompt the AI to give you what you want, especially when it comes to those pictures, or if you're playing with an animal or a human and you want a specific look, you have to really like give a detail of what it is you're looking for to get what you want. And it takes maybe a few times of doing that before you get what you're looking for. And even then, it's still like, okay, now how do I perfect that? Because it's still maybe not so quite believable the second or third time around, but it's much better than it was the first time. But to your point of how it was when it first started from a year ago, I mean, not a year ago, but maybe like how long have we really been using that? Maybe 5 years ago, we'll say, to now, it's much more advanced now for sure. So imagine the growth in just a year, what that'll
Yeah,
look.
it's rolling downhill and picking up speed as it goes.
No,
So,
seriously, it's definitely picking up speed. You can see it and you're like, oh my goodness. But I think that with that, I don't want to spend too much more time on this, but like with the AI, there's going to be people in the industry, in the entertainment business and the film industry and stage that still want the realness and likeness of themselves on camera versus
Yeah.
seeing AI. Maybe this new generation coming up under us won't mind it, but even them, like depending on maybe their upbringing and how they're raised and what they're used to culturally and their experience with this technology would probably determine what we'll see moving forward, because they're the generation that's going to take over ultimately. So it's going to be, what is it that they like and want to see? Do they like the arts, like how we like going to plays and seeing people, or going to the movies and seeing our favorite actors and actresses on the screen, versus now you have the AI, a made up person that's not even real, taking on these roles, and so have you, or whatever that may come with that. Like, it'll be interesting because there are going to be people that want to see human, I think. So I don't feel like it'll go completely away where they're not going to need us or the actual actor or actress anymore.
Yeah. And I think it is all about taste. It's what some people want to see. I find it interesting how they're going to use AI to generate content. I have a friend whose husband was a producer in the news industry, a different part of the television world. And he was talking to me about AI. And so he had some very different ideas about it. But he was like, well, some of the movies that come out, the script could totally be, the idea of the script could totally be generated by AI. And he used schlocky teen horror movies, which are sort of a genre of films right now. And it's like, okay, yes. I don't think you necessarily need to be an Academy Award-winning screenwriter to come up with the plot line of a teen kill flick.
Mhm.
But at the same time, if you're talking about something that does raise the bar artistically,
Mhm.
and bring forward ideas that make people think about things, if you're talking about Oppenheimer or Barbie, you are not talking about the same kind of screenwriter as is generating a schlocky teen horror movie. So I think it does depend on the content, and it does depend on the market that you're going for. I'm hoping that we are going to continue to produce things that make people think and feel. And that's the beautiful part of filmmaking and television, is you can tell a story that makes people see themselves in a different way. And I don't know that if you remove the human element of that, if it's going to tell the same story or not.
Mhm.
And I hope that's not the direction that we're headed in as an industry, where it's just going to be something spit out of a computer or analyzed by an algorithm. And I don't know.
Yeah. So we're hoping that, pretty much in regards to the contract, that it works out in our benefit there too. But again, it's so many moving parts when it comes to the AI because of the growth and the change that comes with that. So
Yeah.
that'll probably always be an update to something in regarding that. I can only imagine.
Yeah. And then the second half of your question about the health plan and our
Yes.
pension plan, I think it's been a difficult 4 years, the last 4 years. The pension and health plan if you think of it, the graphic that they used in the last negotiation was sort of a fountain. That if you think of how a tiered fountain works, the water comes out of the top, it fills up a receptacle near the top of the fountain, the water overflows and it goes down to a lower tier, and then it goes down to a lower tier. And that's kind of how our health plan is set up. The money comes into MPI and first it goes into the pension plan because they have to keep the pension plan solvent, because that's what federal law says. So, and demand on the pension plan has been high. We've allowed people to take money out of their funds in order to pay their bills now. They're sort of robbing Peter to pay Paul and taking from their future retirement in order to have money now, which is great and everybody needs it, but there is an impact to that. We also have finally reached the end of the baby boomers retiring. That's putting an additional drain on the pension plan. And then on top of that, those funds also fund our healthcare. And our healthcare costs are increasing dramatically. You know, I know last year there was a huge uptick in the demand on our healthcare plan. And I think a lot of it was because people actually had that time off and they used it. I can think of easily 5 people who had major surgeries last year that they had been working hurt for a long time because they could not take the time off to have the surgery and make the recovery. And, you know, if you have a large group of people getting expensive surgeries, if your surgery is $100,000 and, you know, we've got hundreds of people doing that, that's pulling a lot of money out of the plan when there's no money going into it. And our health plan is constantly replenishing itself. The money that we pay in now is paying for the retirees, it's paying for the healthcare costs, and healthcare costs are rising everywhere. So I don't really know what that's going to look like for us, but I'm thinking they're probably going to ask us to make some accommodation on the way our healthcare plan in particular is set up. And I personally don't have an issue with that. I know many people working outside of this industry who self-fund their health insurance. And when they find out that I pay 0 cost to cover myself for my health plan, their mouths are on the floor because my sister has a $5,000 deductible on her plan that she has to be $5,000 out of pocket before her insurance pays $1 of anything. So, you know, that's what regular people are sort of looking at in their healthcare. And I think at some point we have to be prepared to partner with our employers and to help them defray the cost of that. And what that looks like, I don't know. You know, if I had to pay to cover myself a little bit, that wouldn't change my life. You know, I would rather have to do that than say have to work more hours, because that becomes difficult, especially, you know, I'm an older person and it just is harder to work the amount of hours that you have to do in full-time employment as you get older.
Yeah.
But, you know, I pay, I think it's $25 a month to cover my husband to be on my policy. If I had to pay the same for myself, $25 a month is not going to change my life. You know,
Right.
if I had to pay thousands of dollars per year for my healthcare, that would change my life. But, you know, paying a little bit to help defray the costs for now, you know, we have, we just need to rethink how our health plan is structured in going forward. And I think it's really unfortunate that as a nation, we don't have universal health care, because I do think that that should be something, you know, every other developed nation in the world provides it for their citizens and finds a way to make it work. And it breaks my heart that we as Americans have a problem with that idea, with providing a social safety net for people. I think that's unfortunate, but that is just the way the situation is. So
Yeah.
I'm hopeful that they can strike the balance, that they can find a way that we can partner with our employers and work to solidify the health plan in a way that isn't going to crush a lot of members, the way that, say, raising the amount of hours you have to work to keep yourself in coverage would. Because I think especially as shows tighten up their budget and hire fewer people, that's going to drive a lot of people off of the health plan and hurt a lot of people if that were to happen.
Yeah. And why is that even considered a thing? Like,
What, raising the amount of hours?
yes.
Well, if you do the simple math of 400 hours in 6 months, 400 hours in 26 weeks is just under 16 hours per week.
Okay.
So there's no other industry in the world that offers the level of healthcare that we get to someone who is a part-time employee in the industry. And if you are only working 2 days a week, you are working part-time in this industry.
Yeah.
And you probably have another source of income in your life, because I don't know how you can afford to pay your bills in
Right.
Los Angeles if you're only working 400 hours every 6 months.
Right.
So I think that's one way to look at it, is
Okay.
that we really are hardly even letting them break even on what they are contributing. And it's, by definition, something that is free has no value. And because our healthcare is free, I think our members do not think of it as having a value. I would love it if you could see somewhere what the actual contributions that came into the plan from your employers were, because it might make people appreciate what the employers are paying on top of your hourly salary as a benefit to you. That, when you think if you think you're being underpaid in your job, but not calculating in that extra money that they're kicking in, you're probably not really being fair to your employer.
That's a good viewpoint that, many probably do not think about.
Yeah, the money has to come from somewhere. So
Yeah.
And what that looks like, I don't know. Whether we go to tiered healthcare, where we have people who work fewer hours and have lesser coverage, I have no idea what they're considering, because I'm not in that part of the negotiation. But
Listen,
that is what other locals have, is sort of tiered healthcare. And what we have is excellent. And I am more than willing to work the hours that I need to. About 10 years ago, they increased the hours from 300 to 400. And there was a huge outcry, and there was the expectation that there would be many people who would drop off of the plan and wouldn't be covered anymore. And statistically, there was almost no difference, because those people who scraped by and only worked 300 hours every 6 months somehow found a way to work an extra day per week and work 400 hours. So that's kind of the challenge, is those people who are working the bare minimum are being supported by the people who are working 90 hours a week. And all of the extra money that's going into the plan is shoring up the people who are only working 400 hours. So it's very difficult that way, when there's such huge disparity in what people work to obtain the same coverage.
Okay. And it's good you're able to, I'm glad we're having this conversation so that we can all kind of get a good idea of what that means, what this looks like, and why we should be more appreciative of what we have and what we could lose, especially if there's ones that are just working part-time. Like you said, if they're working 2 days a week, they might reduce it down to doing tiers as far as coverage. And that could really be hurtful then for those individuals. So it's like, you can't complain. We really can't complain, because we do have it good when you consider all the things as far as what we do, and in comparison to other people that are working and they have to pay their own deductibles and their insurance and health plans. Like, it's way more expensive. It is. So, I mean, I know personally I'm grateful, but I'm like, coming off that strike, it was like, can we get these hours? Can we get this work coming back? Because everybody's hurting here,
Yeah. And the problem with banking more hours is it can't be an unlimited bank, because the money has to keep circulating. You need dollars coming in to pay dollars going out. So if people are using the healthcare and spending the money and drawing on their pensions, there has to be money coming in, because our plan really is kind of like Social Security. It is self-supporting, and it relies on money coming in to pay for the money that's going out.
I'm like, can it be in a way, this is just my own thoughts about it. Like, can it be in a way to where it doesn't affect our own individual money, to where it's like, if I bank my hours, it should be still sitting there so that when I do need to use it, I can use it versus it's lost if it's not used within a period of time.
They're already doing that, because I think people don't realize your bank isn't really a long-term savings plan. Your bank is a short-term savings plan. They are always moving money from your bank into your current situation. So you are always moving that forward, and there's no way to allow you to bank enough hours to cover yourself forever unless they completely rejigger how the health plan works. You know, people say, why can't I donate my extra hours to somebody who needs them? Well, you're already doing that. You're already donating your extra hours to support the people who only make 400 hours, or to support the people who are retirees and who are no longer working at all, but who are still using the health plan. And let's just be honest, most people who are older have more health issues than people who are young and healthy.
Well,
So-
there's that, but then that's changing too, because it's like you starting to see even not maybe 20-year-olds, but maybe some are, but now you're seeing 30 and 40-year-olds having major health issues. Or
no, I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but for the most part, you know, it is the people who are not paying anything into the system who are kind of draining it down, but they have spent their lifetimes paying into the system. And
I guess that's where it's like, okay, so then it comes to a point, if they stop working or they're no longer able to contribute, then, or maybe the years just messed up because of work, or there's not enough work coming in because there's not a lot of productions happening. So you can't bank those hours because there's nothing there. So it's like, okay, those hours that will work, they become lost, but other people are, like you said, it's money going in, money going out. But then it's like when you need it and then you weren't able to pull and get what you need from it, then it just becomes, it's like, well, how does that really benefit the individual for those hours that they did work, even though they might not be sick or needing to use it at that time, but later when they do need it, it might not be there because the work, the hours or whatever are no longer available to them.
well,
Does that make sense?
it does make sense, but one of the things that is costing the plan a lot of money right now is they are providing coverage for people who are not working. Like, for the first time in my career, I've exhausted my bank and my qualifying period has passed and I don't have enough hours to cover my health insurance. MPI is offering me free COBRA. They are going to put me on COBRA, but I'm not going to have to pay I believe it's $900 to cover myself under that. They are going to pick up that tab. So that is also something that is draining it out. And they have been providing that since last fall for people. So they are providing a safety net right now for people. They provided that during COVID for people who didn't have enough hours. But there's no insurance company in the world that is going to offer you coverage if you're not paying into the system. So, and it's not
that, it's just the loss of the hours that has been put into it. Like, you can't say that a person didn't work that. And it's like, okay, so why can't that be held? So you can pull out. It's like a savings. So if you hadn't used it because you didn't need to for whatever reason, is what I'm saying. So it's like, I didn't need to go and dip into my savings because it should still be there versus, okay, within that time frame, it's gone because within that time frame, I didn't need it.
No, you have used it. Like, if your bank has been taken, it's because you didn't work enough hours to put it in. So you are always paying into the system. And once you stop paying into the system is when you don't have coverage anymore. And I think people think about all of the extra hours they work as somehow still belonging to them, like it is their money. But it is the money that is keeping the rest of the plan going. Like, I've been paying into Social Security since I got my first job as a 15-year-old. You know, that money, I have not seen one dime of that Social Security money, but that money's been spent, and it's been spent on the people who are currently drawing Social Security. Now, hopefully Social Security is still going to be there once I am old enough to collect on it. But that is how the system was set up, and that's kind of how our health plan is. Of you
Okay.
are paying for the people who are currently using the system with the dollars that you put in, and when you reach retirement age, if you have reached the benchmarks that you need to reach of, I think it's 20 years and 25,000 hours,
Right.
you will qualify for lifetime medical care.
That milestone, yeah.
Yeah, you have to hit your milestones in order to draw that down. But the money can't sit there forever just waiting for you. If that's what you want, then you should save more money in your own bank account and draw out of it. But that's just not how the plan is set up.
Right. So it just basically boils down to the structure of how it's set up, the plan, how it, as well as how you just, I mean, what it is with Social Security too. It's the same. It's pretty much the same thing. However, it just seems fair that, if you work this time and this put all these hours in, that it's yours and you shouldn't have to worry about losing it. That's ideal. But since it's not, because it's like if we're all working, then it should cover our own whatever we worked for.
But
so
at
if
the same
everyone's
time,
working, so why should it have to pay? Like, you know what I mean? Why should it be locked because it's paid for us? But it's the whole system. So it makes sense because it's the system in how it's able to flow.
Yeah. And like, if you had a job and you worked for Procter and Gamble and you were covered under Procter and Gamble's insurance, the minute that you are no longer employed by Procter and Gamble, you don't have health insurance anymore. That is just sort of how the system works, that you are covered while you are under the plan and active and working. And that isn't necessarily something that you get to take with you when you go, because it isn't your money. It isn't your savings account. It is just what you're paying into. Just the same as if you work all your hours. I have a friend who's very healthy. She goes to the doctor once a year. She gets a physical, she gets a mammogram, she gets a pap smear. That's all she uses her medical plan for. She's never broken a bone. She's never been hospitalized, and yet all of her money goes into the plan the same as everybody else. So unless you have something like a medical savings plan where you are actually saving money and taking it out as you use it, there's no way to make it equitable and fair for everybody, because everybody's needs are different. And, it's the nature of insurance. The money goes into a big pot and people pull it out as they need or as they qualify for it. And what happens if too many people, it's what's happening with homeowners insurance in California right now. There are companies that don't want to do business here anymore because we have too many natural disasters and too many people need to pull that money back out. The gamble doesn't work if there's too many people pulling their money out. It is kind of, I don't want to say a scam, but it's a scheme.
It sounds like it when you say it.
Yeah, it's, in some ways it is a scheme of you pay your money in and hopefully the money's going to be there when you need to take it out. And I don't know, other than universal health care, where the government just administers it, where we pay taxes towards it, and that's how we qualify for it. I don't know how we fix the problem except with universal health care.
Oh yeah. Like, I know how that problem could be fixed, but that's a whole different topic. But yeah, this for the concerns of that area, I hope the listeners can understand those ins and outs of how the structure is and how it works and the system, and how we're able to pull from our pensions, because I think that was a big concern or discussion as far as like, how come we lose hours or the money or whatever the case. I think it was great though that we have it in place because people were able to pull out and help themselves during that time.
Yeah. And I think it's incredible that we work in an industry where you can work in a short period of time, enough hours to cover yourself for an entire year, and then you can take the rest of that time off. When I started working in television, it was much more typical that episodic TV worked a 10-month season. You started your show in July and you wrapped in April. And then you'd have May and June off. And I used to joke it was like being a teacher, but with better benefits. That I could plan on doing absolutely zero for 2 months out of the year. Who else gets to do that? Who gets 8 weeks of vacation every year where you don't have to do anything? You've got your insurance covered, you've got money in the bank, you can take time off and travel or enjoy yourself or do whatever you want to do.
Yeah.
You know, we are so far out of the norm of any other business and how it operates that I don't think you can really apply how it works in the real world to what we do in film and television. Yeah, it's a completely different industry than it was 30 years ago. And the pace of change just keeps getting faster and faster. I mean, the way that things were when I joined in 2000 is not the way, you know, my call sheets came via fax machine in 2000. You had to have a fax machine because not everybody had a computer and not everybody had email. So it was, you know, that was the machine that you had at your house that let you get your call sheet every day. And before that, you know, the union would call you and tell you what your call time was. Like everything went through the union offices of them booking people. So, you know, it has really changed extremely rapidly in the last 20, 25 years.
When did they stop doing that? Because that's always been something commented on, like the union does not get me work. But back then they did. So when did that part stop?
I think the breakup of the studios and the breakup of the, you know, each studio used to have their own makeup and hair department. So they had people that they would use regularly, and then they had people that they would book in if they needed extra help. And the head of the studio hair and makeup department would call the local and say, I need 5 hairdressers tomorrow or 10 makeup artists. And the union would go down the list. You know, they would book journeymen first, and then they would book trainees, or I think they were called something else at that point. But that was when we did have more preference of employment. But we were also a much smaller group then. When you only have a couple hundred hair and makeup artists in your membership, it's just a smaller group of people to draw from. And with technology changing, you know, people used to book through the union a lot more when I joined because people didn't have cell phones. You know, they had pagers, and it was easier to let somebody sitting in an office with a telephone call and book people for you than for you to sit on a payphone, you know, on the lot trying to find your additional people and wait for them to call you back because you'd had to page them and then they'd have to call you. And, you know,
Struggle bus days.
yeah. And now, you know, I would tell new members in initiations, it's like a lot of our department heads don't use the availability list because they have a list in their own smartphone of 200 people that they can text message very quickly.
My hat's off to you and the position that you hold in the board, on the union board, and taking this role for the union and these negotiations. I imagine that's a heavy thing too to carry, because so many people are looking towards you all, the panel that's taking care of this, or that's having this discussion and being the voice, right, to hopefully convince them and help them to see why we need these changes for the workers and the unions. Like that's a lot. It's heavy. I mean, just talking to you briefly on these little notes, and we haven't discussed all the things, but more of the concerning and more important ones, I think, to a lot of us have been like the health, the pension, the pay, the AI, you know, and the work hours. Like those are definitely hot topics for everyone. And like, if we see movement in those areas for the better, that would be amazing. I mean, again, it's a give and take, so it's negotiation. So some things might stick, some things might not. We don't know. I mean, you guys know more so, but do you think that we have like some real light at the end of the tunnel on those topics?
I think so. I think both sides are really motivated to get the best deal possible and get everybody back to work. And I think that's the really big difference in this negotiation, is the willingness to to really fully engage. And I never really felt that during the last contract negotiation from the other side, and one of the nicest things they did at the end of our negotiation is both sides stood up and the two lines crossed each other and we shook hands with every single person who was in the room. And that was just really impressive to me, of looking people in the eye and saying, thank you for meeting us at the table and engaging. And, that's the power of labor, is being united and working for not the good of me, but the good of all. And that's my real desire in being a part of the union, is being of service to my fellow members, just like I come to work and I want to be of service to my department head and my team. Many hands make light work is something my grandma always used to say.
That's my saying too. I say that too.
and if everybody is lifting to the best of their ability, the day goes much easier and much smoother. And I know we have probably both experienced days where you got some dead weight on your team and you feel like you are the only one who's keeping all the balls in the air while everybody else has disappeared. And that's the most important thing, is that we work together and that we be of service to each other.
Yeah.
And we make a deal that is good for everybody, not just a deal that is good for me. So I want what's best for my fellow members, both in Local 706 and in the entire IA. I want the people who are being underpaid, the women in the costuming local who are historically the lowest paid people on set and yet work like dogs and do really physically demanding work of moving costumes and lifting boxes and moving things around, that everybody deserves to be paid fairly and be compensated for their time. And that's really what the negotiation is all about, is making sure that the playing field is leveled so that we can all move forward and make this industry better.
Right. Well, thank you for that, Miss Polly Luke, and hope to get to talk to you again on some future things. I'm sure I will have you back on for some future conversations if you're willing to come play with me.
I would be happy to.
All right. Well, thanks again, and signing out on the Hair Industry Mixer podcast show, and talk to you next time.